In this section of Old Testament history, you probably have the most confusing. If you were trying to figure out what's going on where and who's next and what's going on, this is the most difficult section, and it's called the divided kingdom. So if you go back to some of the beginning charts, did I have one of those? I didn't have to. I have to get this out. No, I guess I didn't. I don't know. Maybe I did. Well, what's going to happen is you're going to have your basic time frames are you have Genesis, and then you have Moses and the Exodus. Okay, and then the next main section they call the United Kingdom. And it has judges and then into the kings that rule the whole nation. Like, yeah, maybe, but I got like these kings are Saul, David, and Solomon. Okay, so you have 3 kings in here, and when they rule the kingdom, it's all in one kingdom. So when they rule it, they're ruling everybody. And then we have a crisis right here, and that's where today's starts, and the kingdom divides. I'm going to have to redo this because it doesn't match my timeline right now, but this kingdom is going to have equivalent to a civil war, and they are going to divide, although there's not actually literally a war that happens. And you're going to have the northern kingdom. And you're going to have the southern kingdom. And it's going to split right above Judah. Now, the little dark line on your map slipped on my computer. So it's down a little bit. It should be right up on the border of Judah. When I see something like that, I go, oh! But it's gonna cut right like this, okay? After a little bit, Benjamin is going to join the southern kingdom. But initially it cuts right here. So you have Judah down here, and Simeon has been incorporated into Judah by now. And then we have what we call the 10 tribes up here. So you have the 10 up here and the Judah down here. And this is going to be called the southern kingdom. It's going to be called Judah. This is going to be called the northern kingdom. It's going to be called Israel. Although, just because we're really geniuses and we can handle all this, from time to time they call the whole thing Israel. Just because, you know, they want to just keep us on our toes and not let anybody just go, oh, I think I know what's going on.
I missed what you said. So Israel is the northern kingdom?
Israel is basically the northern kingdom, and Judah is the southern kingdom, until they're talking about the whole thing, and then it's called Israel. Just so if you're reading this and you're going, wait a minute, we're in the south and they're calling us Israel. Okay, so there's that little caveat there. Just giving, if you're reading through the Old Testament and you're dealing with 1st and 2nd Kings and Chronicles, you're going to go, I'm lost. I'm jumping around. All right. Now, as we go through, another thing that happens as we go through 1st and 2nd Kings particularly, the storyline goes up here, down here, up here, down here, up here, down here. And sometimes it's there. I mean, God did it perfectly, but if you're going to continue a story and there's an overlapping king, then when you get to the end of this story, you've got to go backwards in time to start this story. And then you'll go like this And then you got to go backwards in time to start this story. You get that? Because otherwise you're breaking the story up. It would be just like trying to tell the story of two places at the same time. You would go quite a while, and then you go in the meantime, which kind of takes you backwards to tell this story. So in the meantime is not in the Bible. I would put it in there if I wrote it, but God didn't give me to write it. So I just wanted to show you that that kind of thing happens. At the end of this, today's lesson, this end will end. This kingdom will stop and be taken out. This kingdom will continue on for a while. Okay? That makes sense? Do I have you or anything? Okay. The other thing I would like you to do is you see all the books. If you saw the books on the other pages, if you were in, and this chart right here, I'm trying to get you oriented so you can see what's going on. When someone did this for me, I finally go, oh, that's why I can't make sense of any of this. So when you saw this one, if you see as you do your past pages, the books and these little pictures, they were in orange. If they were in orange, they were the law. All right? If they're in green, they're the books of history. So as you look at what's sitting there and you see all these different colors, you go, oh, those are just really cute, lots of different colors. That's sweet. What's that about? All right? The green ones are the history. So when you spread those out, you go, oh, I'm in this section of the historical books. The purplish ones are the poetry ones. Now here's where I screwed up, just so you want you to know that I do that. In your pictures, the major prophets are in blues, but I made them in brown, so if I ever go back and do this again, I gotta fix this chart and make this in blues. And the minor prophets are in yellow, not purple, all right? So you might just make those two connections, otherwise you're gonna go, I'm lost, all right? Because there is actually a plan to that to help get your brains to understand what's going on. So today we have, we don't have any of the books of the law here, but we have the last three of history, and we have the last three of poetry. We have one major prophet and 6 minor prophets. Okay? All right, now if you look at those 6 yellow minor prophets, there's 2 in the middle at the bottom, 3 up top, and 1 over here later, right? Okay, the 3 up top means they were for the northern kingdom. Okay? They were 4 people in the north. The 3 on the bottom were 4 people in the south. And do you see on the chart that we have a united kingdom here, and then it splits to 2 lines? That's the divided kingdom with the northern kings across the top and the southern kings across the bottom. Another thing I did is I put all the kings in brown and purple. If it's a brown king, he's a bad king. Okay? If it's a purple king, he's probably pretty good king, not perfect king, but somewhat of a good king. Across the top line, there's 2 dark brown kings. They're kind of really bad. And they're the 2 I'm going to talk about today, so I highlighted those 2. And that is Jeroboam and Ahab. You already know Ahab's really bad, and you probably already know Jeroboam's not too good either. Across the bottom, there's other kings across the top. I didn't put all the names in. There's 21 kings total. And some of them rule for 1 year. Some of them rule for 3 months until they're assassinated, and then another one rules for 6 months, and then he gets killed, and then another one. You know, so I couldn't get them all in because the chart's too little. So I just put a bunch of other kings. So that's what you got. At the end, you'll see there's 21 kings across the top. The other thing before I start into what's the story narrative of what's going on is they're pretty much lined up vertically across the timeline. So if you go across the top to the one after Ahab, and it has Jehoram with an arrow sticking up, and you go straight down, you're going to see a Jehoram. Okay, that's because while there's a king named Jehoram in the north, there's a king named Jehoram in the south. That's just because God wants to make sure we're paying attention. And so when
It's just a common name, so it
it's
just,
just a common name, it's a common name. And sometimes they give it a short name. So Jehoram is also
just Jer.
Joram. Okay? It's like the short version of the name. And it can be saying, you can, and believe me, this happened. You're going, oh, it's calling the one in the north Jehoram, and the one in the south Joram. Great, now I can figure it out. Then you turn the page and you know what it's doing? It's calling the one in the north Joram and the one in the south Jehoram. So don't go for that either. Yeah. So just because God says, I want your attention. And so you go a little bit farther and you have a, after Jehu across the top, the next one is Joash. Well, there's a Joash in the north. There's a Joash in the south. Okay? He's also called Jehoash. And he's also called Jehoash. Just letting you know, you got to pay attention. Is it the king of Judah or is it the king of Israel? Which one are they talking about? And just so that you never get relaxed when you do this, when you get to the very end of the northern kingdom, you have a king named Hoshea. And he has a prophet named Hosea. Okay? In Hebrew, the difference between the S and the SH is that one's the SH and that one's the S.
Oh, my word.
So when Jesus talks about dots and tittles,
Yes.
that's what he's talking about. Little details like that. Okay? So, all right, let's see, what else did I have for you today? Oh, the big parentheses. The big parentheses below this section, there's a big black parentheses. That whole time frame is in 1 Kings. See that? Because the book's right underneath the bottom of the parentheses. And then you go to this one, and that whole time frame is in 2 Kings. Yes.
The first parenthesis, there's a green book, I can't read the name.
First Kings.
First Kings.
Yes.
But, oh, this is Second King.
Yes. Yes.
When's the test?
I won't be here.
You're not coming for the test? Oh, come on, I just made it so easy for you. There's a couple of things that make life a little easier, especially if you're trying to find something in the Old Testament and you kind of have an idea of the storyline. Like, you know, David is after Saul, you know, he's before Solomon, stuff like that. If you take 1st and 2nd Samuel, it divides. 1st Samuel is, in my mind, this is my easy memory, David before he's king. 2nd Samuel is David after he's king. Okay? It's not entirely like that, but it's very close to like that. You also have Saul in 1 Samuel. You also have Samuel in 1 Samuel, but the line between 1st and 2nd Samuel is David becomes king. Okay? The line between 1 Kings and 2 Kings is at the top. You see the two blue figures, Elijah and Elisha? Okay, Elijah's at the end of 1 Kings. Elisha's at the beginning of 2 Kings. So they divide right between the two. Now that's not entirely strictly true because Elijah actually goes to heaven in the chariot at the beginning of 2 Kings, but Elisha's there, so it's part of Elisha's story. So if you just need like frame of reference, where are you at, what's going on, that's some of the things I use to remember where I'm at. So if someone asks me, where's the story of Elisha and Naaman when he's healing the leper? Go, well, it's somewhere at the very beginning of 2 Kings. So I'm at least identifying that that's where that's at. And David and Goliath. Well, that's before David became king, so that has to be in 1 Samuel. So you seeing how
Well, that doesn't make
people
sense.
wonder, how do I keep track of things? I have these little like landmarks in the Bible as I go, and I've memorized a few places. Like for instance, David kills Goliath in 1 Samuel 17. In 2 Kings 17, Israel's taken out by Assyria. So 17 has become a ground number for me on these two events. All right? And
You remember this, we're getting freaked out, but you remember this because you work on curriculum for the kids all year, right?
Uh-huh.
So you're
but I've been doing this for a long time.
But for us, our minds are blown, but
That's why I thought I would just try to order things to you a little bit. And just, give you some clues as to how, because people wonder, how do you remember all this stuff? Well, I have these cheat sheets in my head, I'm not just, I don't have a photographic memory, and I just have these cheat sheets. So I use them quite a lot. The other thing that I really had to stop and think about is, do I tell you especially when we get to the minor prophets, okay? Do I show you how the minor prophets work in English order, like Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Mike, or do I show you how they work in historical order? Okay? And how they fit into the story. And I decided to go with historical order because if you know how they fit into the story, then when you read, like if you know where Micah falls in the story, when you read Micah, you're going to go, oh, right? When Obadiah is one of the most depressing books there is to read, and you want to know, why is God coming down so hard in Obadiah? And if you kind of know where it's falling in the storyline and what has just happened, you'll go, okay, I kind of get what's going on in Obadiah. All right? So, all along the way, if you have questions, would you please ask me, because I'm going to try to go from the beginning of Solomon to the fall of the Northern Kingdom today, which is, and I've had to pick and choose in order to get that storyline in, because it's a very long, there's a lot there. And anyway, so if I'm skipping, or if I get my names mixed up and I call him Jehoram when he's Azariah or somebody else, who knows, then
You think we'll know?
okay.
Debbie said.
Alright, one of the things I noticed is that of the good kings, first of all, there's only going to be 7 good kings in the south. The north doesn't get any good kings. They get some bad kings that do a good thing now and then, but they don't get any official, good kings. There's one king that actually wipes out all the Baals, but he leaves the golden calves, so he's not, Anyway, but in the south, there's 7 good kings, not counting David. After Solomon, David and Solomon, there's 7 more. And every one of those 7s is good and has a major failure. Just gonna say they all, and a lot of them have their major failure at the end of their life after being very, very positive and obedient at the beginning of their life. And I thought, oh God, you gotta really warn me, because I do not want to go that route. I want to take that as a lesson learned. I want to take that as a really serious lesson learned, because if over and over and over these faithful people, very, very faithful people, can do a major failure at the end of their life, then so can I. And I don't want to do that. I want to take this seriously as a warning. So we're going to start with David. And David is, this is where I should have finished last week, and I ran out of time, so I'm going to tell you about the last event in David's life. This would be at the end of, oh, I know, one more detail I forgot to tell you in orientation. Chronicles. You look at Chronicles. Chronicles is a repeat of the story of 1st and 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings. So if you go 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, that's Chronicles. And Chronicles deals with from the beginning of David's life to the end of David's life. And 2nd Chronicles deals with Solomon to the end. However, it only deals with the southern kingdom. So Chronicles does not deal with the northern kingdom. 2nd Chronicles deals with the southern kingdom. The only time there's any mention of the northern kingdom stuff going on is when Ahab comes down and does something bad. Or when so-and-so comes down and there's an interaction. So Chronicles is about the second kingdom. And if you ask, why do we even have Chronicles then? It's kind of like, why do we have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John? Okay? There's different viewpoints, there's a different aspect. Sometimes you get exactly the same information, and sometimes you get different information. So like one of my favorite Old Testament kings is Jehoshaphat. In 2 Kings, Jehoshaphat gets about 10 verses. In 2 Chronicles, Jehoshaphat gets 3 chapters. Okay? So stuff like that.
So does that correspond with when the Northern Kingdom ends? Is that why they don't talk about it? Or is that, because you said,
It's mostly because it's from the viewpoint of worshiping God and the priests and how things are going, and is there revival in the nation and is there not revival in the nation and stuff like that. That's real general because there's a lot of bad stuff down in Chronicles too. And the Northern Kingdom doesn't have any.
They didn't have any good kings.
No.
oh, yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
All right, so one of the last things David did just to set this up is that he decides we're at the very end of 2 Samuel, and David has already, he's already given his last charge, he's already given everything, and he's probably close to 68, 70 years old, and he decides he wants to number his army. Now, one of the rules in Deuteronomy 17 for the rules for kings, and Deuteronomy 17 is an expansion of the covenant. So if the covenant is there and it is expanded in detail, the information there is in the covenant, in the big covenant with God, all right? And so how is the king supposed to behave? 1, he's not supposed to take a lot of wives. Okay, nobody did that. Number 2, he's not supposed to amass a great army. And number 2, and it's said in there, you are not supposed to go after chariots. And that's like an idiom for amassing a great army. Okay? You are not supposed to be oriented to getting how much gold you can get. Money's not supposed to be his issue. Okay, so when David says at the end of his life, I am going to figure out how big my army is, he is violating that thing. Now, in 2 Samuel, it just says David decided to do this. If you go to 1 Chronicles and you read David's story, it says Satan motivated him to do it. So, and I thought, of all the things Satan could motivate somebody to do, why is numbering, it took me a long time to think this out, why is numbering the army such a big thing? Satan has not been mentioned since Job, and the only time he was mentioned before Job was in the garden. So this is his 3rd appearance on the scene. Why is this one so big? You know? So he is getting to David at the end to break this covenant at the end of David's life. And David does, and even Joab, who's a iffy, good, bad character back and forth, which is his commander of his army, tells him, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And David lays down the law, you got to do this. It takes them 10 months to travel the whole nation and number the army. And between the north and the south, they come out with, I think, 1,300,000 men ready to fight. Currently, as of 22 or 21, the standing army of the United States, including all of its branches, was 1,400,000. So this little nation has a standing army almost as big as the entire United States. That's all of our branches together, which, okay, so as soon as this happens, it's not Nathan, it's one of the other prophets, and he comes to David and he says, okay, you have your choice. You can have 3 years of famine. You can have 3 months of complete devastation from the enemy, of losing every time, every battle. Or you can have 3 days of absolute pestilence. And what he's saying, pestilence, some disease is going to hit where people are just going to start dying like this. And David goes, okay, I'll take it directly from the hand of the Lord. And you can see there's this, all right, I did it. I got to take the discipline. And I think there's something like 70, he takes the 3 days. I think something like 70,000 of his soldiers died in the next 3 days. I might have that number wrong. I've gone through all this and I have all these numbers jumbled in my head, but something huge. And so David is at this place that's close to his citadel. His citadel is called, his fort is called the City of David. So it took, I didn't get this for a long time too. I thought the City of David was Jerusalem. The City of David is technically the part that is his fort. So if you could get in there, you would be safe from the enemy. And it is just south of the Temple Mount. If you remember when we were sitting on the steps there and the band was being set up so we could hardly hear Adam speaking, that's where it was. And it's a big archaeological place right now. There's a museum there. We didn't get to go through all the details of that, but that's called the City of David. And it's this long, skinny thing. And just north of it is the Temple Mount. And at this time, there's no temple there. He doesn't even own, and the whole area of Jerusalem is really small compared to what it is now. And the area above that is owned by a Jebusite who's not even Jewish, okay? And so David happens to go there. God says go there, and he goes there, and he can see the angel of the Lord with his sword ready to destroy Jerusalem. And he goes, and he gets down and he prays, and God stops him. And he decides he wants to build an altar there and sacrifice. And so he goes and he gets the owner, and the owner says, I will give you the land. I will give you the land. I will give you, it was a threshing floor. I will give you the equipment, which was made out of wood. You can turn that into on top of your altar. And I will even give you the oxen that were pulling the threshing thing. And you can do that. And David goes, no, I will not offer sacrifice that costs me nothing. So he pays full price for this. And he offers this, and the plague stops. And that becomes the Temple Mount. And that becomes the same place where the assumption is where Abraham offered Isaac. So yes, David gets to the end of his life. He makes a horrible decision. It costs a lot of other people a lot of pain and heartache, but he repents, which is something that some of the others don't do. So that was why I started with that story. Did you have a question? No, I thought you did. Okay, so David dies and Solomon takes over, and that's a really cool story. And I did not check this out, but I think he comes in on a donkey.
Solomon?
Yes, but I didn't check that out again. That's long-term memory detail. And most of the time they came in on white horses and they entered through the eastern gate. And for some reason, I think he came in on a donkey. Or a mule. Maybe it was a mule. It was a mule?
Well, it was one or the other, I don't know which, but it was like when Jesus came in.
Uh-huh. It's like, there's all these little pictures of him, of Jesus all over the place.
So I just Googled it and it says, the king comes in on a donkey. Behold, your king is coming to you righteous, having salvation, humbly mounted on a donkey, on the foal of a donkey.
Right, that's in Zechariah 9:9, right?
We'd have to open it more.
Yeah, but that is a prophecy of Jesus, that's not Solomon.
Oh, I said Solomon.
Anyway, so,
Sorry.
so he comes in and,
Oh, here's Solomon riding a mule, a donkey.
okay, I was wondering if I got that one.
It says both Solomon and Jesus.
Yeah,
What was he riding?
Donkey.
a donkey or a mule, one of the two.
The line has a.
It wasn't a horse.
I don't know. We get David's last words to Solomon as he becomes king. That's in 1 Kings chapter 2. I'm just going to read a little bit. This is what David tells Solomon. Because we are setting up a pattern. We're setting up a, David's going to pass it on to his son. This is what you need to do. This is how to keep the covenant. This is how to keep the blessing. This is what you need to do. And then we're going to see what Solomon does with it, and we're going to see how this story goes on. So I tried to pick out a lot of these. In 1 Kings chapter 2, verse 1. As David's time to die drew near, he charged Solomon his son, saying, I am going the way of all the earth. Be strong, therefore, and show yourself a man. Keep the charge of the Lord your God, to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes, his commandments, his ordinances, and his testimonies, according to what was written in the law of Moses, that you may succeed in all that you do and wherever you turn. But what nice, cool, Solomon's just become king, David is dying, and that's what's said. I think that's really neat. Okay, so a little while later, they're going through, there's stuff that Solomon, I have to skip over a bunch of stuff, but there's a little while later, Solomon is down in Gibeah, the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant is somewhere in the city of David, inside the fortress, okay, the actual Ark of the Covenant. But the rest of the tabernacle is down at Gibeah, which is not too far away. It's, here's Jerusalem, there's Gibeon, right there. Gibeon was the ones who tricked Joshua into making the covenant, okay? So this, and they have been sort of absorbed into the Jewish, and they are ones charged with doing the water and the wood for the tabernacle. Okay, so the tabernacle is still there, and Solomon goes down there, and he's offering a ton of sacrifice. It says 1,000 bulls and 120,000 sheep or something. I mean, I can't even picture this. And he's offering this, and God comes to him at night and says, okay, so what would you like? Pick what you want. I will grant you your wish, your prayer. Now, if you were a young 21 or 22-year-old guy who has just been crowned king of the greatest nation on the planet at the moment, and maybe not quite, but yeah, what would you ask, you know? I try to think of what our young men would ask for now. And Solomon asks for, you guys all know, he asks for wisdom. He says, I don't know how to rule these people. I don't know how to make wise judgments. I don't know how to make these decisions. I just need wisdom. And so God gives him wisdom, and God is so thrilled, he gives him everything else too. He gives him fame, he gives him wealth, he gives him success in everything he does. He does all kinds of things, and so the blessing is very much amazing. And so that's pretty cool. That's in chapter 3 of 1 Kings. And God's response was, verse 12, behold, I have done according to your words. Behold, I have given you a wise and discerning heart, so that there has been no one like you before you, and nor shall one rise like you rise after you. I have also given you what you have not asked for, both riches and honor, so that there will not be among any of the kings one like you all your days. If you walk in my ways, keeping my statutes, commandments as your father David walked, then I will prolong your days. And it also is going to go on a little bit later saying that if you keep my covenant, I will pass the Davidic covenant that was given to David, that passed on to Solomon for the king rulership, will be passed on through his sons as long as they continue to obey. Okay, so there's two parts to that covenant. There's the absolute unconditional part, and then there's the conditional parts that goes through each of the kings. And which is why, and then the unconditional part is the eventual king that rules forever, and that's Jesus. But in the meantime, these kings don't have a free pass. They have to keep the covenant as they go. Otherwise, well, you guys just know what a sin nature will do. I mean, look what happens in the story. You see all the Browns in the story anyway, right? The Brown kings in the story, and they would have a hard time. So Solomon displays his wisdom. He shows, the two women about he does that. He's real smart, and he figures this out, and then he decides he's going to build a temple. So he builds the temple. I think it takes 20 years to build this temple. The amount of supplies and value and silver and gold is unreal. It's just unreal. It was to the point where the gold and the silver was so much that they didn't even bother to count the value of the bronze, because it was just beyond. So they built this beautiful temple, and by chapter 8, it's done, and we're ready to dedicate the temple. And the people of Israel have worked like crazy to build this temple. And everybody has been involved. Do you remember way back when the people asked Samuel for a king, and he doesn't want to set up a king because he wants, and God says, you go ahead and tell them that's okay, but you need to warn them what a king's going to do. Okay, so this king, Solomon, he conscripts everybody to work, and how well they're paid, I didn't find it. They are taxed tremendously. They are probably taxed as much as we are, maybe more. I do not know. I know that they're taxed a lot. And so we get to the dedication of the temple, and let's see, where did I want to read this? I wanted to read this at, I think I'm going to read it in Chronicles. So go to Chronicles, Second Chronicles, because we're in Solomon. Chapter 5. Let's start at verse 2. Then Solomon assembled to Jerusalem the elders of Israel, and all the leads of all the tribes, and the leads of the fathers' households, that would be your Bet-Ogs, the sons of Israel, to bring up the ark of the covenant of the Lord out of the city of David, which is Zion. And all the men assembled themselves to the king at the feast, that is in the 7th month. Then all the elders of Israel came, and the Levites took up the ark. See, they're carrying it correctly this time. They brought the ark into the tent of meeting, and all the holy utensils which were there, and the Levitical priests brought them up. And King Solomon and all the congregation of Israel who were assembled with him before the ark were sacrificing so many sheep and oxen that they could not be numbered. And the priests brought the ark of the covenant into its place, into the inner sanctuary of the house, into the Holy of Holies, under the wings of the cherubim. For the cherubim spread their wings over the place of the ark, so that the cherubim made a covering for the ark. And then it talks about the poles. The poles are sticking out. but not out, sticking out of the little room, but not out of the thing. Then go down to 10. There was nothing in the ark except the 2 tablets which Moses put there at Horeb. That's Mount Sinai, where the Lord made a covenant with the sons of Israel when they came out of Egypt. Okay, so they go on and there's singing and there's dancing and there's all kinds of stuff. And go down to verse 14. And then, they're singing. Let's go to 13. In unison, when the trumpeters and the singers made themselves heard with one voice to praise and glorify the Lord, they lifted up their voice accompanied by trumpets and cymbals and instruments of music. And they praised the Lord. He is indeed good, for his loving kindness is everlasting. Then the house of the Lord, was filled with a cloud, so that the priests could not stand to minister because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the house. So remember the glory of the Lord had left? The glory of the Lord has come back. So the glory of the Lord fills the house. It's really a cool little thing. And so then there's something really good here in Solomon is going to do this big prayer. And he's going to get down on his knees, and he's got everybody there. He's going to get down on his knees in front of the altar, which is in front of the building. And he's going to put his hands up, and he's going to say this prayer. And he's going to say, this is chapter 7. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, excuse me. 6.
It's like 6:12.
Yeah. He stood there before the altar of the Lord in the presence of all this assembly of Israel and spread out his hands. There's another, here it is. Now Solomon made a bronze platform, 5 cubits long, 5 cubits wide, 3 cubits high, and set it in the midst of the court. And he stood on it, knelt on his knees in the presence of all the assembly of Israel, and spread out his hands to heaven. O Lord, the God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven and earth, keeping covenant and showing loving kindness to your servants who walk before you with all their heart, who has kept with your servant David, my father, that which you have promised him. Indeed, you have spoken with your mouth and have fulfilled it with your hand, as it is this day. Now therefore, O Lord God of Israel, keep with your servant David, my father, what you have promised, saying, you shall not lack a man to sit on the throne of Israel, if only your sons will take heed to their way, to walk in my law as you have walked before me today. And it goes on, and then he goes over, and then he goes, okay, so the people, and he's praying to God, this is his prayer. So what if we sin? It says, this is 21, listen to the supplication of your servant, of your people, when they pray to this place, and hear from your dwelling place, from heaven, hear and forgive. If a man sins against his neighbor, that's 1, then hear and forgive. And they pray to that, looking at that place. Jump down to 24. If your people are defeated by an enemy because they have sinned against you, and they come back and they turn and they pray to you, and facing this place, then please hear from heaven. I'm kind of summarizing real quick here. From heaven, and forgive their sins and bring them back to the land. When the look at number 3. When the heavens are shut up and there is no rain because they have sinned against you, and they confess your name and pray towards this place, then hear from heaven and forgive their sin. Number 4. If there is a famine in the land, if there's a pestilence or a blight or a mildew, if there are locusts or grasshoppers, if the enemy has besieged them in the land, wherever in their cities, whatever plague or sickness there is, and if they pray and kneel, and each one knowing his affliction, then down in 30, then hear from heaven your dwelling place, and please forgive and render to each one, for you know their hearts. There's more. What about the foreigner? Can the foreigner pray here? Yes, that's in 32. What about if 34? What about if your people go to battle? Can they stand and pray towards your thing? That's in 34. What about when they just sin against you? And look at this. This is 36. For there is no man who does not sin. Does that remind you of Romans 3:23? And you are angry and you deliver them to the enemy so that they take them away captive to a land far off or near. If they take thought in the land where they are taken captive and repent and make supplication to you in the land of their captivity, saying, we have sinned and we have committed iniquity and acted wickedly. If they return to you with their whole heart and with all their soul in the land of their captivity, where they have been taken, and pray toward the land which you have given to their fathers, and the city which you have chosen, and toward the house which I have built for your name, then hear from heaven, from your dwelling place, their prayer and supplications, and maintain their cause, and forgive their sins. And it goes on and on. Does that remind you of anybody?
Well, is it saying that if they're in captivity, as long as because they're not there, so if they pray toward it, so to me that makes me think of Mecca with the.
Well, that makes me think of, who does that make you think of who's praying towards Jerusalem and convincing and admitting the sins of his people? That's Daniel.
Oh, Daniel.
That's what Daniel's doing when they capture him to throw him in the lion's den. He's following this to the letter. Okay, I'm gonna do one more thing and then we'll break. Solomon finishes his prayer and God's gonna answer. Okay? So we're in chapter 7, verse 12. Then the Lord appeared to Solomon at night and said to him, I have heard your prayer, and I have chosen this place for myself as a house of sacrifice. If I shut up the heavens so that there is no rain, and if I command the locusts to devour the land, or if I send pestilence among my people, and my people, who are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray, and seek my face, and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven, and I will forgive their sin, and heal their land. And I just love God's answer. So
awesome.
this sets the precedent for the rest of the story, as far as how is Israel going to live out the rest of the story. Do they sin? Yes. Do they repent? Sometimes.
Right.
Okay? So all the way through, you've got to use this is the criteria. It's passed from David to Solomon. David did a good job training his son. And we'll see how it goes after this. Okay, so it's time for a break.
Oh, Prescott?
Well, we got quite a ways to go, so you have your running shoes on? So I thought I'd tell you that by the end of Solomon's life, he has forgotten what this impactive day. And he takes a lot of wives. Is putting it mildly.
Yeah, how did that even start? I mean, why did they all just do that? I don't.
That is how they made alliances with other countries.
Oh, okay.
But do you remember way back at the beginning of this covenant that they were not supposed to make alliances with other countries? Okay, so the way they made an alliance with another country is that you married the daughter of that king with the son of this king or whatever. And that's how they made an alliance with other countries. And he made a lot of alliances, and he had a lot of wives and a lot of concubines. It turns out that the number ends up being 1,000. How one man can deal with 1,000, I have no clue.
How many children?
right?
You don't even know how many children.
Then there's got to be children everywhere.
They all named Kegs.
They were named Tex. I'm guessing that how would he even know who his children are? You know, I mean, that's unreal. So, but the main problem with this is that each of these wives from these other nations brought their idols in. And it says in 1 Kings chapter 11, verse 4, it came about, well, in verse 3 it said he had 700 wives, princesses, and 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away. For it came about when Solomon was old, his wives turned his heart away after other gods, and his heart was not wholly devoted to the Lord his God as the heart of David his father had been. For Solomon went after the Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the detestable idol of the Ammonites. Solomon did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and did not follow the Lord fully as David his father had done. Then he built a high place for Chemosh, the detestable idol of Moab, on the mountain which is east of Jerusalem. That would have been the Mount of Olives. And for Molech, the detestable idol of the sons of Ammon. He also, thus also he did for all his foreign wives who burned incense and sacrificed to their gods. Okay, so the result of that is God's not going to let that just slide. And the result of that is that the discipline that Solomon's going to get is that most of the nation's going to be torn from him. So Solomon is actually the cause of the split. Okay? But he says, because your father is David, I won't do this in your lifetime. I will do this in your son. So, the United Kingdom continues to, now see, I gotta take this down because it's not matching the timeline at all. And just because I'm freaky like that. Okay, so Solomon continues to about 930. And here's where this is, and then it splits. And we have the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. I did yours as a straight line because time immediately, there's not a delay in time here. And this becomes the northern kingdom. Let's take Jehoram and throw him down. And this is going to go all the way to there. And the southern kingdom is going to go on. And we don't need our shin up here anymore. Okay, so the first, and this is the southern kingdom. Okay, so the first two guys, and I gotta go over this very quickly, are Rehoboam and Jeroboam. Rehoboam is Solomon's son. Jeroboam is one of Solomon's great administrators. And there's all this and that and this and that. But it turns out that, that Rehoboam is made king. And he is going to be king over the whole place on one condition. So the people of the north come to him and they ask, Rehoboam, you are the new king, and Solomon made our taxes and our workload incredibly heavy. The temple's done now. The buildings are done now. Everything's done now. Can you lighten the load? So Rehoboam goes and he has a discussion with his advisors, and he goes to all the older advisors and they say, yes, that's really wise. They will be faithful to you and you will have a faithful kingdom. And then Rehoboam goes to his younger advisors and they go, no way, that makes you look like a wimp. You got to tell them that you're stronger than your dad and that your little finger is stronger than anything your dad had, and you got to increase their taxes and their stuff. And of course, Rehoboam chooses option number 2, and that causes them to split. That is the reason for this. The actual reason for the split is God's judgment on Solomon.
Right.
But it turns out that this is how it happens. And so from then on, they stay split. And the northern kingdom goes to Jeroboam. That's a whole nother story. Southern kingdom goes to Rehoboam. Rehoboam does have a couple of good things he does, but he's not considered a good king on the whole. If you just read commentators, so that's where I'm getting that from. He's not on the list of one of the better kings. Jeroboam decides that he's afraid that his people, 3 times a year, they're supposed to do what? Do you remember?
Go over the covenant?
Yeah, they're supposed to go down to the temple and on 3 festivals a year and sacrifice and go over the covenant, right? Okay, so he's afraid that if his people come down here 3 times a year to worship the Lord, they're going to change their mind and decide that they want to be part of this kingdom. So he's got to make a change and not do that. So what he does is he builds 2 places that they can worship to make it nice and convenient. One is at Bethel, which is right about here, which, by the way, is on the main road down to Jerusalem. And the other one's up here at Dan. So it's kind of the ends of the northern kingdom. And you could pick, you could go to Bethel or you could go to Dan. And you guys all know what these things are. These are 2 golden calves. And as he dedicates them, he says, these are my words, something like, "Here, O Israel, is the God that brought you up out of the house of slavery." I mean, it's almost a direct quote of Aaron at the foot of Mount Sinai. And those 2 golden calves stay there throughout the entire time of the northern kingdom. And they become the main worship center for the northern kingdom. And that is not good. Okay, so that's Jeroboam and Rehoboam. There's all kinds of more stuff in there. The other thing I wanted to mention real quick, do you see on your chart that the minor prophets are here? There's all kinds of prophets along here too. It's not like God left these guys without prophets. They just didn't write books. So because they don't write books, I don't have a yellow book up there for them, but there's prophets all over the place. There was a prophet that came to Jeroboam and said, "Don't do this." There's all kinds of stuff going on. And you'd have to kind of keep track of all the different prophets. Sometimes you see them for 1 verse, and then that's what that one prophet does. And go on to another one. So time goes by, and we've gone through a bunch of other kings following Jeroboam, and we're in the north, and King Ahab comes, and he is a story that intermixes with Elijah, right? You guys know all that? And Mount Carmel, and Elijah, King Ahab decides to make an alliance with I'm trying to think of the name of the country. Tyre and Sidon? No, what goes with Tyre?
Sidon.
Sidon.
Yeah, Sidon.
I'm on Saigon, and I know that's not right. Sorry. So he makes an alliance with them, and the alliance includes marrying their daughter. And that daughter is, y'all know? Yeah, that daughter's Jezebel. Jezebel is one dynamic personality. We are in 1 Kings, chapters, 16, 17, around in there. And he's going, I don't know if it actually says that he marries her right then, but it's going to come it'll be mentioned in the story somewhere, that she's the daughter of that. Or maybe that's in Chronicles. Okay, so she sets up massive Baal worship. And all these worship of other idols, when it said detestable, what they do is detestable. Okay, just letting you know this is detestable. And probably culminates in passing their children through the fire. Okay, and that's detestable. I can't imagine that, but so she sets this up, and she sets up a big system of Baal worship in the northern kingdom, and Elijah's a dynamic personality, and he confronts them and says, okay, I'm saying, for God, it's not going to rain. And don't think that it will until I change my mind. Walks away out of the court. That would be pretty bold in front of such a place. And it did not rain for 3.5 years. That's a long time if you do not have reservoirs and things like that. That means that everything's dying. Food is scarce, animals are dying, everything's dying. And that, Elijah has to run and go live by the brook Cherith, and the ravens feed him. This is a wonderful story for kids. And then he goes up to the area of Sidon. No, did I have that right? Mm-hmm. And that's near where Jezebel was, but there's one lady up there who actually believes in the Lord God. And he does the make me the loaf of bread and the bread and the flour and the oil thing. And then her son dies, and he raises her son, and then he goes back. I'm going through this really, really fast. He goes back, he runs into this guy named Obadiah, not the same Obadiah as the Obadiah minor prophet. This is a different guy, and he happens to work for Ahab. And he's a faithful Israelite who believes in the one true God, and he works for Ahab. And Ahab, or Jezebel, one of the two, had ordered all the prophets killed, all the prophets of the Lord God killed. And he risked his life and hid 100 of them in caves and fed them. And then Elijah comes walking in, and he sees him, and they recognize each other, and he goes, hey, Obadiah, go tell Ahab I'm here to see him. And he goes, are you out of your mind? They've been searching for you for 3.5 years, and you're just going to have me just say, hey, I know where he's at, and I will be killed right then. And so he bet, it's kind of this neat little story. And so anyway, Ahab and Elijah meet, and they go up and they have, you guys know the whole thing, and the big sacrifice and all they build the altar up there, and all the people are watching, and just choose for yourself which God is real, and they cut them, the prophets of Baal do the dance and the cut and the bleed and the thing, and it just goes on all day long, and no fire comes down, and nobody's listening, and Elijah makes fun of them. He says, maybe he's busy. He might be taking a nap. He might be out on vacation. I didn't look it up, but one guy thought that maybe it meant that he was occupied in the bathroom. Something like that. And so Elijah's really making fun of them. And of course, then it's his turn, and he puts the water on, and it fills the trench. And then the fire comes down and burns up the waters. I mean, I love to see that. And then he goes out, and he goes to the very edge of Mount Carmel that looks over the Med, and he sticks his head down and he prays for the water. And he has the servant go back and forth 7 times. And he finally sees the tiny, tiny little cloud in the distance. And he goes, run and tell Ahab to run and get down this hill, because he's not going to make it. And of course the torrential rain comes, and Elijah is able to outrun a chariot. That's got to be a miracle in itself. He outruns a chariot, and then he has this big depression time, right? You guys know that. And then you have the story of the still small voice in the cave, right? He's way down in Sinai by this time. I'm trying to jump on to the next thing. Anyway, that's Elijah. Elijah and Mount Carmel on the other side. In the meantime, while Ahab is king, Jehoshaphat is king of the south. Now, it took me a while to put this together, because Jehoshaphat's story is really neat, and it interacts with Ahab. And Jehoshaphat has times when, I'm knowing that time, he is a real good king. He starts a revival. He gets people involved. He sends out Levitical priests all over his nation to teach the people. He gives each one of them a scroll, says, go teach the people. It's really, really cool. And then he ends up, remember I told you all good kings make bad decisions? I want to take Jehoshaphat. He decides that he is going to make an alliance with Ahab so that the north and the south are not fighting against each other. So he marries his son to Ahab's daughter. Ahab's daughter is named Athaliah. His son is one of those Jehorims. Okay, so Jehoram marries Athaliah. Athaliah has a brother named Jehoram, so that's where we get the two kings from. You think Jezebel is bad? I don't know. I would vote for maybe Athaliah beating her. That was her mom. This is her daughter. She is one bad lady, and she marries into the southern family. And turns out that Jehoram, her husband dies, and her son, which is Azariah maybe, he dies, and so now she wants to be queen and rule. And what she does is that I'm jumping ahead. Anyway, she kills the rest of the royal family, which happens to be all her grandchildren, so that there is no one to take the throne.
Wow.
That's what you call one bad lady. And she rules for about 7 years. Well, in the meantime, her stepdaughter from her husband's other wife happens to marry the high priest. And this is so proper. He happens to marry the high priest. She sneaks into, oh, by the way, when her son dies, he's only 23, which means all these children, all her grandchildren are children. Because he's only 23, so how old can those children be, right? So this lady's name is, I know it, Jehoshaphat. I'm pretty sure that's her name. She is stepdaughter from another wife. She's married to the high priest. She sneaks in while the thing is going on that's killing the children, and grabs the baby, who's a baby, and his nurse, the one nursing him, and pulls them out and hides them in the temple for 6 years. I know,
For 6 years?
6 years. Wow. Hidden in the temple for 6 years. At age 7, this guy becomes king.
Yeah, I remember the child king.
Yep. Okay. Just to make sure that the soap opera hasn't ended yet. In the meantime, Jehoshaphat makes another bad deal, and he does this with King Ahab. He makes this alliance, and from the north, up here, Aram has attacked the northern kingdom, and so Ahab and Jehoshaphat are joining up as a military thing to go get them, right? Okay, so this is a cool story. So they're sitting there and they're trying to get advice from the gods. And I say that plural perfect.
There's intentionally.
Okay, so there's 2 thrones sitting here. Here's Ahab, here's Jehoshaphat, and they bring in all the prophets. And the prophets come, these are prophets of Baal. They don't actually tell you that until you find out later, because God's good at telling the story. Because it just keeps your attention. So the prophets come in and they go, should we go to battle? Will we win? Will we lose? They go, you will win, you will win, you will win, you will not. And pretty soon Jehoshaphat goes, do we have even one prophet from the Lord here? And so we go, yes. And so they go get him, and on the way, the messenger says to the prophet, Micaiah maybe? Not sure. Says to him, give him a good report. You have to give him a good report. I don't care what you do. I don't care what's true. You gotta give him a good report. So Micaiah goes, okay, so he's standing in front of me. He goes, we're gonna win? What's the Lord saying? He goes, you're gonna win. And wait a minute. Then finally they go, all right, tell us the truth. And he goes, all right, this is what's gonna happen. you, Ahab, are gonna die. And you are gonna survive. Okay, so they go into battle. This is what Ahab does. He dresses up Jehoshaphat in Ahab's royal clothing. And he dresses up Ahab himself as just a run-of-the-mill soldier that does nothing, right? I mean, just right. So they go flying into the battle, and the enemy's there, and they come, and they see the king. They go charging at him, and they pull the thing, and at the last minute, the archer sees that. Oh, that's not Ahab's face. So he drops the arrow and doesn't shoot him. In the meantime, some other lone, who knows what, soldier shoots a random arrow off mark. And it hits between the chinks of Ahab's armor and kills him. And I don't know, just a cool story. if you've got 10-year-old boys, I mean, they're going to love this story. So, back to Athaliah, she, when they have to do, and the king, Joash, and he's 7, and they bring him in, and they have to arrange a undercovers kind of like bring him in so that they can anoint him king without Athaliah knowing about it. And she hears the noise because pretty soon everybody's shouting and yelling, and they got the crown on him, and now they're all praising and everything. And she comes running into the temple area. Treason, treason! She's screaming this, and they pull her out of the temple because you don't want to kill her in the temple. And they kill her there, and everybody celebrates. So that's the end of Athaliah. So my daughter, I told her this story last time. She goes, "It needed a more climax." I go, "Okay, well, I'm sorry. That's the way I didn't write the story." All right, so Jehoshaphat does one other thing, is he makes a deal with Ahab's son, and that is Jehoram, which would be now somewhat related because of the marriage. And they are to go on this big, they get all their ships together, and they're going to go to Tarsus and get a whole bunch of goods and make a ton of money. And God, it's not like this, and he has all the ships sink. Now, that doesn't sound like any big deal until you figure out how much money was lost. That was one major loss as in the financial area. So that's Jehoshaphat's story. I told you Jehoram and Athaliah already. Elisha comes into this at this you see it's kind of going like this, you get it?
Right.
Okay, so Elisha comes into this, we're at the very beginning of 2 Kings, and he is going to do more miracles than anybody listed in the Bible other than Jesus. I didn't find that out till just, I don't know, a couple days ago. But they've got 14 of them listed. He's going to open the Jordan. Well, he gets to see Elijah taken up to heaven. He gets the double portion, right? He's going to open the Jordan. He's going to fix Jericho's spring because it's bad water. He has bears come out and punish a bunch of rebellious teenagers. He floods ditches so that Edom can't attack. He multiplies the widow's oil. The Shunammite woman has a baby. Then he raises that baby because that baby dies. He fixes poison stew. He raises an axe head. He heals Naaman's leprosy. Gehazi gets leprosy. That's his servant for trying to manipulate this and get some money out of it. This is one. His servant, he's at one point, he keeps telling the king, the northern king, when Aram up here is going to attack. So Aram gets real upset and says, "There's a spy in our midst," because Israel's king always knows our plans. And the guy goes, "No, there's no spy, it's Elisha. He already knows." So King goes, okay, fine, we're going in to kill one man. So he brings his whole army in to kill one man. And Elisha's servant is up one morning, maybe out in the garden, picking the fruit for breakfast or whatever it is, and he looks up and surrounding them is the entire chariots, army, everything of Aram. And he just freaks out. And Elisha goes, nah, you don't need to worry. We have a bigger army and there's 2 of them, right? And so Elisha prays and says, God, open his eyes. And when he opens his eyes, there's this huge army of angels. And then Elisha blinds them all. He goes, oh God, make them so they can't see where they're going, meaning the enemy army. And so they're all blind. And they come up to him and they go, we need to find Elisha. Do you know where he's at? And he goes, oh yeah, let me take you to him. You see, actually put some story into it, and it's very humorous what God does. So there's more to that, but and then Elisha actually does a miracle after he's dead. His bones raise someone. So he's actually buried. They throw somebody in on his grave by accident, and the person comes back to life by touching his bones. That's quite a thing. So Elisha has all kinds of stuff going on. From there on, the story's not real pretty, especially in the north. The story just keeps going on. We have Jehu actually does kill a bunch of Baal worshippers. He becomes king sort of by insurrection, and there's this huge giant Baal temple, and he calls for this big festival, and he gets all the Baal priests from all over the northern Israel to come to worship at the thing, and then he has his army attack and burn it down. So that was a good thing, except for he kept the idols. He kept the golden calves. So he got started, didn't finish it. So let me go through the minor prophets with you. We're going to do the first 6. And I told you I played little games to remember what's going on. If you know your minor prophets in order, they go Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah. Let's do the first 6. If you want to know where they ministered, they go like this. Hosea is to the north. Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah. I play that silly little game when I'm trying to remember. Where was Amos at? What was he doing? Now that's not the order in time, but that's their location. Okay? So the first one that happens is Obadiah. There's 2 opinions on this. Obadiah could have been very far into the future, like at the fall of Babylon, but there's reason to think that he's earlier. And he is, where did I put Obadiah? He should be on the bottom, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. Obadiah is actually a prophet to Edom. Do you remember who Edom is? Edom. Edom on the map is south down here, south of the Dead Sea. And they are the descendants of Esau. And they are the ones that would not let Israel pass through. Well, there's times during Jehoshaphat's reign and the guy after him where Edom kept attacking Israel, and Judah, and attacking Judah. And he would get Moab in here and they would attack Judah. And that's right about the time when they think Obadiah was written as a judgment for Edom. So that helps if you ever are reading Obadiah and you go, because it's just judgment. Severe judgment on Edom, and you want to know why, there's at least reason for the why. Joel is probably next, and it's Joel over here. Joel is during the reigns of Joash and Jehu, and he is the guy with the locusts and the severe drought, and he's doing, Joel, let's do the Southern Kingdom. The book has stuff that is about their history currently. It has a whole lot of stuff on the Day of the Lord. You'll hear that in Joel. And so it has stuff that's happening currently. It has some prophecies that happen both currently and future, like the near-far thing. And it has some that are future. But it has the phrase Day of the Lord is in there a lot.
And that is referring to the future though.
Yes, depending on the context of what's going on. So the Day of the Lord might have been 100 years future for them, or it could be the second coming of Christ's future. Okay? So the next one would have been Jonah in timeline. Jonah I have up in the north. He's not really a prophet to the north, but he's a prophet farther up in the north. He goes all the way up to Nineveh. He is at about 760. This is interesting. And he goes up to Nineveh. You guys know the story of Jonah, and he gets swallowed by the whale, and he gets spit out, and he doesn't want to go to Nineveh, and he doesn't like Nineveh. He goes up there anyway, and when he preaches, he goes, "You're all going to die if you don't repent." And he goes through the city, and you could just see there's no care for the people whatsoever. And then he's more worried about the little plant that dies over his head later on. And the last verse says, God says, "Jonah, you're really concerned about this plant. Are you concerned about the 120,000 people who don't know their right hand from their left in Nineveh? If you don't know your right hand from your left, you're probably a child." Right? Here's one person said, I don't know, this is just speculation. If Jonah had actually cared, and had Jonah followed up some, and done some teaching, or just anything, do you realize that we are only 38 years out from the invasion of the exact same people into the northern kingdom? Those 120,000 that don't know their right hand from their left became the soldiers that came in. That was just, it makes the stories mean so much more if you just have a little bit of orientation to what's going on in history. So that's Jonah. Amos is from the south, and he is sent to the north. He comes into the story right after Jonah, just a little bit after there. So he is in there about 33 years before the end. So we're down to, I mean, I know what happened 33 years ago, you know, in my life. And 33 years goes by fast. And they are within 33 years of the end. They don't know that yet, but Amos goes up there and he preaches at Bethel, which is one of the main places of idol worship. And he even preaches at Jeroboam II's palace. So there's that one up there to the north. And then there's Hosea. He also goes to the north. You guys know about Hosea. He's the guy who has to marry the prostitute, because he is a picture of what Israel is. He has sort of a long stretch, but he goes about there. So he is in the prophecy time when this is happening. So that story's going on right during that. If you know that that's what's going on when Hosea is written, that makes a lot more sense. So why he had to marry the prostitute, because he's being the illustration of what Israel has done. So there's that. And then the last one I have here is Micah. He goes to the south. Micah is coterminous with Isaiah. And he is down here in this area. This is Micah and Isaiah. Each one of these has a picture of Jesus. You have in Obadiah, he's going to be a judgment. Remember in Revelation it says he's going to judge the nations with a rod of iron. That reminds me of Obadiah. In Jonah, you have a picture of Jesus as the 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the whale. That was even said that is. In Micah, you have the prophecy of Bethlehem, Micah 5:2. In Hosea, find out that Jesus is going to come back. It's Hosea 11:1. He's going to be brought up from from Egypt. My son I brought up from Egypt. Let's see, what else between you and this? Joel is about the day of the Lord. That's the second coming of Jesus. And Amos, what did I find in Amos? I don't know, I might have to find something. There's got to be something in Amos. So, I want to tell you about the end. Okay? We're at the Assyrian invasion. And the king of Assyria is going to come down, and Hoshea is the last king of Israel, and he sees that this is the time when Assyria, up here, is becoming very, very strong. And he's trying to take over all this. He's actually trying to get down to Egypt. That's their plan. Because remember at the very beginning I told you that it was Assyria and the powers of Egypt, and these guys are in the middle? Okay, so he's trying to get down to there, and Assyria is becoming very, very powerful. So Hoshea makes a covenant with the king of Assyria. And there's Sargon, it's Shalmaneser, it's Tiglath-Pileser, but they changed because they're all taking each other out. Who's going to be king? So there's always politics going on, just in case you want to know. And so anyway, Hoshea makes a covenant. It's a vassal, suzerain covenant with Assyria. It says, we will be your servants, we will give tribute to you, you will not destroy us as you come through. Okay, that's fine. That goes on for a couple years, 2 or 3 years, and then Hoshea decides that that's costing him too much, so he decides to break that covenant and go down to Egypt and make a covenant. Okay, when Shalmaneser or Sargon or whoever it is that's king at that time finds out that he has done that. Oh my goodness, you do not do that to a suzerain. He comes through and he wipes out the northern Israel. He actually puts Hoshea in jail, and he puts a 3-year siege around Samaria, the capital city. So can you have any clue what goes on inside of a city, a walled city, when it's under siege for 3 years? It makes detestable sound nice. Yeah, so that's what goes on there. He ends up taking them out. And when they are hauled off into exile, what their system was to take the people that they had conquered, and they don't move them in a group. Like, they don't move all these Israelite people to this place here. What they do is they spread them so that they intermarry and they lose identity. So these are the 12 tribes of Israel that never came back. And then he leaves a few in the land, and what he does is he brings people from other places that he's conquered and brings them in. And so that they are all mixed and they lose identity. That's the source of the Samaritans. And that's why the Jewish people couldn't stand the Samaritans. Because they're partially Jewish and they're partially all these other things. And at the same time, they get to keep worshiping Yahweh, but they have to worship these guys too. So they have the synchronistic type of worship. So that's what's going on. That's this condition of the northern kingdom. In the meantime, there's this guy named Ahaz, and he's the king of the south at this time, and I will tell you what he does next time. But I wanted you to look at 2 Kings chapter 17, and we'll finish with this if I can get through it. Starting at verse 7, this is God's summary of what happened. Now this came about, meaning that the Assyrians had taken over northern Israel. This came about because the sons of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God, who brought them up from the land of Egypt under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and they feared other gods. And they walked in the customs of the nations whom the Lord had driven out before the sons of Israel, of the kings of Israel which they had introduced. The sons of Israel did things secretly which were not right against the Lord. Moreover, they built for themselves high places in all their towns, from watchtower to fortified city. They set up for themselves sacred pillars and Asherim on every high hill and under every green tree. And there they burnt incense on all the high places, as the nations did which the Lord carried away into exile before them. And they did evil things to provoke the Lord. They served idols, concerning which the Lord had said, "You shall not do this thing." Yet the Lord warned Israel and Judah through all the prophets and every seer, saying, "Turn from your evil ways and keep my commandments, my statutes, according to all the law which I commanded your fathers, and which I sent to you through my servants the prophets." However, they did not listen, but stiffened their neck like their fathers, who did not believe in the Lord their God. They rejected his statutes and his covenant, which he made with their fathers, and his warning which he had warned them. And they followed vanity and became vain, and went after the nations which surrounded them, concerning which the Lord had commanded them not to be like. They forsook all the commandments of the Lord their God, and made for themselves molten images, even 2 calves, and made Asherim, and worshipped all the host of heaven and the Baals. They even made their sons and daughters pass through the fire, and practiced divination and enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord, provoking him. So the Lord was very angry with Israel, and removed them from his sight. None was left except the tribe of Judah. So, that's what happened to the northern kingdom. If we had any sense in our nation, we would take heed. Dear Father in heaven, thank you that you were incredibly patient with the northern kingdom, and that you sent many prophets, and you gave many, many chances. And I also thank you that justice is real, because otherwise you're not right. You don't maintain righteousness. And I would ask that each of us in our own lives, in our own little ways, learn from this, and learn not to be women of faith who fail in older life. Learn to be ones who stand strong to the end. In Jesus' name I ask all these things. Amen.